Errol Flynn was the epitome of Hollywood's golden age adventure hero. Dashing, athletic, and charismatic. Born in Tasmania, Australia, he arrived in Hollywood in the 1930s and quickly became Warner Brothers' top star with swashbuckling roles in films like Captain Blood 1935, The Charge of the Light. Most people remember Errol Flynn as the ultimate swashbuckling hero, bold, charming, and unmistakably larger than life. Many assumed he was Irish, shaped by his accent and romantic screen presence. But Flynn himself always corrected the record. He was not Irish at all. He was Australian, more precisely, Tasmanian. Tasmania, Flynn liked to explain, is a small island far south of mainland Australia, so remote that few people could place it on a map. He joked that it looked like a kidney, or sometimes a heart, and claimed that its position near the South Pole might explain his unusually big one. It was there, under circumstances as unusual as the man himself, that Errol Flynn was born. His father was a young professor of biology, a scientist, who joined the famed Aurora expedition led by Ernest Shackleton. The expedition's ship, the Aurora, carried researchers south on a journey of exploration and discovery. Flynn was born during that period while his parents were traveling, an origin story that seemed fitting for a man who would spend his life in motion. Flynn often joked that he had been born when he was very young, as if even his arrival into the world had been casual and accidental. Of his earliest years, Flynn remembered very little. The first decade of his life, he said, was mostly anonymous, fleeting images, fragments of childhood mischief, memories of animals and open spaces. He spent those years moving between England, Ireland, and Australia, absorbing places rather than settling into them. Even as a child, stability was rare, and travel was already shaping his sense of self. Myths followed him everywhere. One of the most persistent was the claim that Flynn had boxed in the Olympics. He denied it outright. Though he had been selected for boxing and diving, he admitted he was a terrible boxer and despised being hit. Ironically, his convincing portrayal of a boxer in Gentleman Jim helped cement the legend, proving once again that Flynn's greatest talent was making fiction feel real. Among his more unusual experiences was his time in New Guinea, where he briefly served in a policing role. The irony was not lost on him. Though he counted many policemen among his friends, Flynn found the position deeply uncomfortable and later admitted it left him with a lasting dislike for authority. Freedom, not order, had always been his natural state. Hollywood transformed Flynn into a legend, beginning with Captain Blood in the mid-1930s. From there, he became the face of adventure cinema, swords, ships, and heroic escapes defining his public image. Yet behind the scenes, Flynn was increasingly aware that the persona had begun to overshadow the man. That awareness shaped his later work. In Too Much, Too Soon, Flynn portrayed John Barrymore, an actor he deeply admired and had known personally. Barrymore was more than a subject. He was a friend. Flynn resisted imitation, choosing instead to capture Barrymore at a vulnerable point in his life, before self-parody took over, before brilliance curdled into excess. It was a performance rooted in empathy rather than spectacle. A similar shift appeared in The Sun Also Rises, where critics, some of them longtime skeptics, acknowledged a new depth in Flynn's work. He claimed no conscious improvement, crediting instead the vision of producers and the freedom to inhabit characters shaped by loss and reflection. Praise, he said, was rare and unexpected, but he accepted it with quiet gratitude. When news arrived that he had been nominated for an Academy Award, Flynn was genuinely astonished. It was an honor he never expected, and perhaps never fully believed belonged to him. Away from the camera, Flynn struggled with writing. His attempts at autobiography were painful and uncertain. He found writing far harder than acting, describing the process as exhausting and almost unbearable. Reading his own words filled him with doubt, yet he persisted, compelled by the same restless energy that had driven him across oceans and continents. In late 1942, Flynn was charged with statutory rape of two underage girls, Betty Hansen, 17, and Peggy Satterley, 17, alleging incidents aboard his yacht. The trial became a media circus, with sensational testimony and crowds mobbing the courthouse. The case shocked Hollywood and the public alike. Newspapers across the world followed the trial closely, and Flynn became a symbol of what many saw as Hollywood's moral decay. The phrase, "in like Flynn," took on darker connotations, and public opinion turned sharply against him. The trial itself was long, public, and deeply divisive. Flynn maintained his innocence throughout, and after deliberation, the jury acquitted him on all charges. Legally, he was cleared. But in the court of public opinion, the damage was permanent. For many, the verdict did little to erase suspicion, and Flynn's reputation never fully recovered. The scandal marked a turning point. Although Warner Brothers continued to employ him, his roles began to change, and the carefree hero of earlier years gave way to darker, more troubled characters. Flynn himself appeared altered, more cynical, more defensive, and increasingly at odds with the image Hollywood had built around him. By the mid-1950s, Flynn had settled, if only loosely, in Spain, living aboard a boat with his wife, child, and an